In this credit card ecosystem, we talk a lot about how to use points and miles to make experiences happen. While that should be the core focus, it's also important to understand where most people go wrong in using points and miles. So in today's video, we'll cover the top 5 mistakes that people make when using points and miles. If you're new to the channel, my name is Abhi. This is Credit Debit with Abhi, and like we do in all of our videos, without further ado, let's dive in. The number one mistake according to me is the mistake of hoarding your credit card points and miles. 99% of the people in the world do not care about what happens in this niche world. However, if you're watching this video, you probably in that 1% that really cares about how to use your points and miles. The one mistake I see people consistently making is hoarding a bunch of points, hoping to use it at a future date. The feeling of being able to save up all of these points and see them in your account can be rewarding at times. But I think if you're playing this game with the goal of having experiences, then not using your points and miles consistently and frequently is actually a loss. Because you're going through all of these hoops and hurdles to be able to accumulate and earn these points at a higher rate than the average person, and yet you're not living the experiences that come with it. So bragging about having 1 million points in one currency and 5 million points in another currency doesn't really serve you. For all I care, even if you were to use it in the least efficient way, that's better than just hoarding a bunch of points that you never use. The second mistake I see a lot of people making is earning in the wrong currency. When I say wrong, it might have a negative connotation because it makes it seem like one's better than the other. But the reality is, wrong is very subjective to who you are. There are 2 ways you can earn points and miles. Number 1 is through the transferable currencies of Chase, Amex, Citi, Capital One, and the list goes on. The second way you can earn points and miles is by spending on co-branded credit cards. So these are the co-branded credit cards for Marriott, Delta Airlines, United Airlines, and again, the list goes on. And the reason I feel like a lot of people make a mistake in which currency they choose is down to them not tying which currency they earn to the goals that they have. Now, if you're a persona that stays with just one hotel and cares a lot about having status with that hotel, while it may not be the most rewarding strategy when looked at rationally from anyone else's perspective, for you, it makes complete sense. You're earning points in a currency that mattered to you, and you're probably making your way towards the status that also matters to you. At the same rate, if your goal is to be able to travel anywhere, live in any hotel you like to, have experiences like business class flights, or even redeem your points for cashback, transferable currency is probably the way to go. What you do not want to be doing is, if that's your goal, starting to spend a ton of money on co-branded credit cards and vice versa. The third mistake a lot of people make is not meeting the minimum spend on a credit card after they acquire a new credit card. Being in this space and being tempted by credit cards, I'm constantly fascinated by elevated intro offers. But I do believe you have to ask yourself the question, do I have enough spend coming up over the next couple of months to be able to justify getting this credit card? The last thing you want to be doing is getting a credit card, getting a hit on your credit score report, and then not being able to meet the minimum spend requirement on the credit card. This has happened to a couple of my friends who don't necessarily play the credit card game, but get a new credit card and forget that you actually have to get to a minimum spend to get the intro offer, which makes the credit card worth your while. The fourth mistake I see a lot of people making, and it's kind of related to the third mistake I talked about, is spending way more than they should have to get to the intro offer on a credit card. Of all the mistakes I'm going to talk about today, this is probably the one that I've made the most number of times. You see an elevated offer, you apply for a credit card, you get the credit card, you know you have to get to either $4,000 or $6,000 in a certain amount of time. The dopamine kicks in and your mind goes into reward mode. Meaning you start manufacturing and manifesting various ways to be able to get to the minimum spend on the credit card. And what ends up happening is you end up spending more than you had initially envisioned. And that's never a good strategy, especially if you're playing this game. Another way to think about this is when you calculate the return on investment for a new credit card, you're looking at the number of points, the average value of those points, and dividing it by the minimum spend that you had to put in to get to those points. Every time you spend more than you should have or needed to, you're actually taking away from the return on the investment on the credit card. So play the game, have fun, but don't be irresponsible. The last mistake, and probably the most common one, is playing the credit card game on someone else's terms. Now, the way I see or tend to use my points and miles should be different than how you use it. The way I value points and miles should be different than how you value points and miles. There is no one way that makes sense for everyone. Anyone who tells you that unless there was a 2 cent per point return on the points and miles that you used, you're really not playing the game the right way is wrong. If you have a cash flow crunch in a month and you want to be able to use your points to be able to do a cash redemption, you should absolutely go ahead and do it, even if the value is less than what the points guy says. On the other hand, if you are someone who values luxury experiences, then absolutely use your points and miles to be able to book a business class flight or book a hotel that you wouldn't pay cash price for. But saying one's better than the other or one's more important than the other is actually not the way to think about it, because is you're one of one. Well, those were the top 5 mistakes in the points and miles game according to me. Let me know what you think are some of the common mistakes that people make in the comments below. And like always, I'll see you in the next one.